Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Hans Utter. His last name is spelled Utter. And I was on a show with him recently with one of my guests I've had on talking about Eyes Wide Shut. That show was Black Pill Digest #1, and he was on there. So I recognized his name because I'd heard many of his shows going back 10 years on Gnostic Media, Jan Irvin's Gnostic Media. And his first show he did on that program was in 2011. That's titled Ethnomusicology. But I was listening. I was just trying to catch up. I reached out to him. He agreed to an interview. Just trying to catch up on all the shows. I remember he was on Ed Opperman, I think when I was even a producer for Ed. And he's done 12 shows there. He also had his own show for a couple of years. It was called Eyes Wide Open. So I'm delighted to have him. I'll just read his bio. He has a lot of slides to go over and really great, unique research, some stuff that I haven't seen before, and I've read a lot. Hans Utter is an ethnomusicologist, author, producer, and researcher. He's actually a doctor as well. He is deeply rooted in Indian classical music, having studied extensively in India under the tutelage of the world-renowned sitar maestro, Ustad Shujat Khan, performing in Europe, Asia, and North America. As a composer, he explores the crossover between Indian music, jazz, rock, and Western classical music, and is also an accomplished guitar player. His research extends from music cognition to the Persian court music of Central Asia, connecting music, culture, practices, and philosophy with human development and world history. And you can see if you're watching this on any of the streams that I have running, Rockfin, YouTube, and Twitter, which will also go to Odyssey and Rumble. So you can watch the show on any of those if you want to see it instead of the audio. You'll see a picture of him with his sitar and in, I think, the ethnic clothes. But I'm delighted to have him. The title of the show is MKULTRA for the Masses, You, the Culture and Control, and with researcher Hans Utter. So Hans, welcome to the show.
Hey, William, it's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm here.
I'm delighted you agreed to it. So people who may not have heard your name, I've seen your name around and listened to many of your shows a while back. Can you kind of go through your background and what got you interested in kind of these topics and leading up to the most recent show, which I heard with you with Jan, maybe it was 3 years ago, about MKUltra?
Well, I'd say the topics became interested in me more than I became interested in them. So it sort of happened. But so, background, I mean, I've been at university. I've worked as a professional musician. Not always, no, it's always by choice. I've taught in universities. I've done quite a variety of stuff. But basically, I got into this topic because I basically I lived in India for a number of years, and then I was in Tajikistan, a little bit Central Asia, and back in the States, and I had done an interview with Jan a while back. I had a book, it's called Transritual Rhythm, and so I was on Jan's show. I think at the time, he's talking about the mushroom god is coming to visit me, so it was he obviously shifted from that position, but that was whenever that was. But he ended up contacting me a number of years later, just out of the blue, and said, "Hey, I had a guest cancel, so can you do something on music and mind control?" And I'm like, okay, let me look into it, because I hadn't really thought about it per se, right? And but I had developed, for my research, I had sort of like a research model that's very comprehensive, going over all different sort of interlocking layers of a culture, society, sound, media, economy, et cetera, right? So I just applied that model to Western music, and it really, it kind of blew me away. I had experiences of, being at certain types of rock shows, of, one thing I remember in Goa in India, there was a whole forest and it was painted day glow. And I walked in there and everyone's on E and the techno, I think some like Goa Gill or famous DJ was there. And it just was really disturbing to me, and I was stranded and I wasn't on, any drugs. Maybe if I was, I would have enjoyed it more, but it was an extremely compelling example. I could see, and there's thousands of people, right? And they have speakers and they day glow, but they were like zombies. It was like, I could, and the music, I had, I was more sort of a purist, classicist, wherever, in the Indian classical music. And I was like, this is unbelievable. It's like this, it was like this, it was witnessing a mass ritual. There's like, I've never talked about this on the show, but there's like people like painted like in ashes, they have like the sadhus, but people, their whole bodies covered in ashes, like you see like in those voodoo ceremonies, and just mechanical music. And I was stranded there, I couldn't even get out, and I was like, so that's an example of maybe I'd encountered it, but I'd never thought about it. Right. So I started doing these shows, and I just, I got into it. And so as it unfolded, as soon as like the layer was open, then everything, it's completely apparent. But the complexity of it, the history, all the different levels, how it interlocks with all these other parts of culture and society, those aspects are really endlessly fascinating. And so hopefully that's a semi verbose, concise response.
But these like public forums, these musical forums, some of them are ritualized, right? They are intended to affect all your senses, maybe even going back in time to ancient Greece or Near East or something like that. Even so it's just brought up to the current environment, right? And with newer ideas, symbols, musical styles, like you mentioned in the pre-show, we mentioned this whole thing that went down in Texas. What was it, Netherworld, or what was it, Astro World? Like that was so strange. They had the weirdest mind control music to start off. It was like these horns to get people's attention, and it was totally occultic and satanic. I mean, it was off the charts. So these people are being exposed to those occult esoteric concepts, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that, so let me try to, actually, this kind of parallels the notes I took, right? So it'll kind of dial into that. Like how is it very distinct in this age? It's absolutely different, completely distinct from any period in history. Okay. And you could say the very beginnings, going back to like the Tin Pan Alley, 1920s, not that there wasn't indications, of course, I mean, music influencing society and culture, which I'll get into, but the main thing that's different is what we have is the generation of the mass mind, right? The massification you have. And so, you know what? I'm going to dive into my notes. It were just an outline. See, here it is. Everybody can see. Wow. It's a lot of stuff. No. So we want to look at, like, first of all, category where we can start with like, what is music, how it actually affects you. That's the whole neurophysiology, the fact that it literally, in a certain way, music is a mirror of the inner processes, both of the body, the mind, the emotions, as well as the social. Music represents the social, or can represent the social, or helps to generate social systems and structures. So it's very interesting, right? But it literally does that. So it's not just like, oh, that's some cool, that's a cool guitar lick, man. Yeah, far out. Well, it may be a cool guitar lick, but it's the devil. No, I'm just kidding. So
it's a full culture, right? It's its own culture. Music creates culture. It's very powerful. It's super potent.
Yeah. Well, so I'll dive back into that a little bit later. So this is going to be kind of more of just an overview thumbnail stuff. But so we just started with like, how do we define music? Classic, you can say classical versus popular music, right? So these are two kind of categories. And, classical, that's just a term, right? But it's usually systematic. It's usually continuing for a very long time, like traditional. I mean, it's usually represents sort of the highest edifice of any particular culture, right? Whether it's, Balinese gamelan music, or whether it's, Kazakh throat singing. I'm sure, I don't know if that exists or not, but it could, or, shash makam, like you have. So this, so it's almost like a supporting foundation of the values. And right, it's so you think of it as a bedrock. Think of Western classical music, it going all the way back to plain chant, Gregorian chant, all the way through symphonies and stuff like that, opera. We're very distant from that now. But think of that, what an edifice like Beethoven, all this stuff, what it represents in terms of human achievement, but also a connection of the individual with the highest or higher, deeper
Right, like
development.
Handel's like Hallelujah, like played every year. It still connects people to this day, going back to what,
Yeah.
17 something.
Yeah. So I'm just using that as a thumbnail for classical music, right? We have, of course, a major subdivision, which is ritual music. Okay, ritual music. So I'll talk a little about ritual today, ritual and mass initiation. But so ritual, we're going to put that in a bracket, right? Because ritual is a process, right? It's a process: initiation, separation, and return. It takes you from where you were, puts you into a different space, and brings you back different. A wedding is a ritual, right? Graduation ceremony is a ritual. But rituals also, so they affect us psychologically. Going in the if you're Australian Aboriginal and you have to live in the desert for 20 days and to be a man or whatever, that's a ritual. So this, we'll keep that aside. But then the other side, we have popular and folk music, right? So when we think about folk music or popular music, which we have to step back before we really had a mass culture, right? So you have traditional music that is part of, like, say, like Appalachian folk music, or I don't know, like my family out in Pennsylvania, they play this type of, country music from that thing. It's part of the family tradition, right? So that's kind of a folk music, and it's shared among communities, and it's part of the soil almost. It's locally rooted, right? Obviously not now, but I'm saying in general. Okay. And then we have sort of popular music, which prior to the massification. So I'll get back to that. Massification, creation of a mass mind, right? That's a central aspect. Why it's different. But popular music, but you have like popular songs, you have like John Philip Sousa, you have marches and stuff like that, right? Or Camptown Ladies, right? That's an example. But when we go into modern popular music, it's like they're taking and in all of this stuff and producing it: the clothing, the style, the lifestyle, the personalities, the relational spaces, everything like that. And then that is dropped in on top of a pre-existing culture to change it, to shape it, to merge with it, to draw people in. So, you know what I mean? So it's hopefully I'm not being too abstract.
No, but it makes perfect sense. So you're seeing this mass kind of formation of culture where it wasn't the same before. It was regional. There wasn't as much communication as there is now. Today, well, if you're a big, powerful person, but like a known musician, your music goes global. It really is global, and the culture associated with that music goes global as well. Whether it's the clothes, Kanye is a perfect example, or Ye, right? So he makes that music, but he also is selling clothes, shoes, his culture, his ideas, right?
Rocking the black hood, man.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, I'm not, but no, that's exactly right. And so the thing is that, if we, like, just I'll give you an example. So, there's individual, like, artists or whatever. So one thing, I think a base thing, is that there is sort of an organic arising of music and a changing of music through the times, right? So music will change with the time. That has been interrupted. Okay. And then of course we have recorded music, but we also have, when I was a kid or whatever, I used to listen to this show called Psychedelic Sunday with Russell Carey. It's this British guy to play all this obscure psychedelic music. You didn't hear, you wouldn't hear classic rock. That was oldies, right? It was, you know what I mean? So that whole classic rock coming in. So what this does is it locks. A great example of this is change in fashion. When you have this visual, you have this video, you have this mass representation, you see clothing, fashion doesn't change. You ever think about it? Go look on a street in 1920. Look at our streets. Same. Like how much, if you look at the changes before, how, building architect, you know what I mean? So we're almost like we're stuck. It's a way of interrupting the temporal development of a culture, right? But anyways, so when you create a mass movement, right? So this is, usually it's not going to be a single group will do that. It all kind of fits together. But then that goes with all the aspects of music that we can connect with, that how it affects our minds, our bodies, our spirits, and how it reflects and either nurtures or potentially poisons the ground, the root of your life, of your society, of your relationships, right? It can be very poisonous, right?
No question. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that. I mean, it's good or bad, but the potency is there. Like people have always known that music is a way to the minds of people, much more effective than even words, because it cuts across all kind of intellectual levels, right? Anybody can listen to a song or listen to that. I think the Beatles, whoever was behind the Beatles knew that too, right? Like one of the biggest culture creators, change agents in all of human history, really.
Yeah, and so just to let's give a concrete example. So look at, we think of F. Scott. So what I want to just relate, and I'm just the broader connection to this whole fabric, right, of the experience of an era. For example, let's look at the jazz age, right? Think of F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby, jazz. This music being introduced. You could be bringing a video. You look at the way people danced before. Then you look at the frenetic movements, right?
The flappers, right? Wasn't that the
flappers,
flapper
girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that might be. It's interesting to see that, right? If you compare that, and so this was, and then you have, everyone knows like the Torches of Freedom, right? That was that Edward Bernays' great propaganda coup, where women would not smoke. It was considered to be, everything reprehensible. And also, of course, it smells bad and it's dangerous. Well, he hired all these models to go parade down Park Avenue. Cigarettes were torches of freedom for women's liberation. Overnight, female smoking skyrocketed, right? But the jazz age, this is, and I can get into these specific music styles, but that is an example. Think about that. And what was the fundamental agent there? Was the music. Okay, the music itself, because it goes below and above your conscious awareness, your conscious mind. And, not that, I'm not, like, there was a period when I started getting into this, stuff started to freak me out because I could literally feel how this music was affecting me. And, anyone can do that, but you have to gather that awareness, right? And so, but well, let's I've got a whole bunch of stuff here, but
But that's kind of the beginning of it. That's really kind of the beginning of these mass movements, the mass music of control and influence. And maybe like World War II, they had all the songs for the war. They had all that kind of jingoism. And then the 60s was just a total, birth of the child, the,
you can
Age of Horus or something like that.
We see one thing, just it's interesting to note, right? So we have this mass transmission, right? This is based on technology, right? What is the fundamental basis? Of course, is means of communication, right? Means like mass means. I mean, that's one of the main generational aspects. Generational as a foundational aspect, right? So you have the radio. It's not. So here's the thing, just to get a little bit conspiratorial, which actually this is a complete supposition or speculation, but if you look at radio was known for decades and decades before it was on the public market. It's not like radio was a secret. I mean, it was a secret because they used it for the military, right? Marconi. So before it was publicly available, it was kept, for military use or whatever. It was not, you couldn't, there was no radio, right? You didn't have radio. And so there was like 20, 30 years to study this and plan it and then implement it. You know what I mean? And so for example, with the Jazz Age, you have, how did that spread? You have video, you have film, right? You have early film, and you have radio, and you have, then you have records, right? And then you also have magazines, newspapers. So this is one thing you can see, right? You can look at the Beat Generation, right? That was promoted in the mass media. So underground movement, right? Like my underground movement, I'm not getting any mass media attention. Maybe I don't want to, but you know what I'm saying, right? So there's things like this not promoted, but you look at the 60s, before there was the first hippie, they were doing specials on TV before there even was a Summer of Love, before the hippie even existed. And in fact, I have to track this video down. I have a video of it's like a local California TV station that was ended up broadcast nationally before the hippies even started, with the unknown Grateful Dead, who were known as the Warlocks, and they ended up interviewing these guys who were just some dudes, right? This is before. What is the hippie? Well, there weren't any hippies before that even happened. It was an idea in the mind, in the mass mind, right? Before it even occurred, right? And so I've had a lot of, not too many, but I've had people sometimes get very pissed off, and I usually don't even respond. You know what I mean? It's not even worth my time, but but people, they're very emotionally attached to it, right?
Hold on, you're getting angry about what? Just the fact that the hippie was created?
Well, no, I mean, you look at what like music, like someone who loves the Grateful Dead, someone who loves the Beatles, someone who loves, Slayer, someone who loves, I don't know, it's not that bad maybe, but you know what I'm saying? Like people get really, it's very personal.
Personal, yeah. The Dead is super personal. Didn't they have a handler who was like, whose dad was a Tavistock Intel guy? I forgot what that whole story was.
Well, they are top to bottom, man. I mean, the Grateful Dead, their first manager was a protege of Saul Alinsky. So wow. Saul Alinsky was there right at the founding Rules for Radicals, right, with the Warlocks, right. And then of course you got Jerry Garcia working with top secret government clearance, working in a missile silo that suddenly just gets discharged. Okay, and then he becomes a rock star. It's all over, man. I mean, that whole band is really one of the biggest plays that has been done, and really kind of diabolical in that it's very it's very you think of like kind of you may think they're cheesy or they're too peace and love, but there's so much stuff in the Grateful Dead, man. We could just keep going. And so and of course there are major LSD distributors across the United States. I mean, there's intelligence, even experimentation. I mean, all this stuff was developed in the Princeton radio. You have like Princeton Radio Project. You have all this stuff being developed in the 30s and 40s, right? Light, sound, phonic driving, audio frequency, stuff like that. Then it's deployed in the 60s, right? So hopefully I'm not.
This is an interesting picture. There he is, all these change agents, Ginsberg, pranksters, Neil Cassidy from On the Road, Grateful Dead. Some of these people I don't know, but it's like in 65, they kind of had it all together, man.
And the thing is, you don't even need, right, everybody to be an agent, right? And so I'm certainly not of that ilk, that, everyone's an agent. But like, I like Jimi Hendrix. People say he was in the military. I don't think Jimi Hendrix is a mind control agent, even though I don't. But like, and then you can just need one person in the band, right? Or you need one handler, right? But but on the other hand, you have a band like the Dead, which is just top to bottom. I mean, you have even military intel. You have the whole thing, man. And they're connected deeply with the whole cybernetics culture. In fact, I have all these, rare audio clips of the Dead talking themselves, like Jerry Garcia talking about a total, surveillance state, where you just exist in your virtual world. And this is like 93, man. I mean, these guys, Jerry Garcia, he's a smart guy, man. He's an intellectual, right? I mean, so they are so much part of this, and they were experts in the ritual process. They really understood the ritual process. and the invigoratory aspect of that. And so, and when you go and you're on LSD, you know, your mind is, you could just be completely programmed and you don't even know what's put in there. You know what I mean?
So that critical mind is gone, right? Those people, and then they actually dance in like a ritual fashion, like they're in some like rites of Eleusis or something like that in ancient Greece. Like they are just going into a state of kind of ecstasy or trance or something.
You know, if we ever want to get back into that, because it is the rites of Eleusis. In fact, it's deliberately based on that. It's modeled on that.
I didn't know
they
that.
discuss it, and I can show, you know, the pictures and everything like that. But this is just one example. But we could go on down the list. But I have some pictures of that. But let me just, I'm going to throw up here see if this works here. I had some issues with the slides, but I'm going to.
Yeah, the Crowley did the rites of Eleusis too. Like there's pictures of him doing that whole. This is Crowley.
Well, Crowley. The thing about Crowley, right? You know, who also has that both intelligence side, right? So he was intelligence agent, but so, I mean, he owned a club called the Beetle in London, and this is where he began to work with this idea, right, of, which is extremely powerful. And this is actually really a central tenet in a lot of the stuff we see around us, right? So he would have a theater play, right? A play, a performance, something like that, a variety show. He even managed a all-female ragtime band. Okay. But you go in this club and there's like a play. In fact, that play is an occult initiation, or they're performing the ritual and they're feeding on you, or, you know, whatever. And sometimes they have like wine that's laced with hallucinogens. Theosophic Society, they had this sort of Unitarian version of Christianity that was actually ritual inductions, ritual things that the participants weren't aware of. But Crowley developed this concept and this actualization of using the principle of all the you could look at it as psychological, metaphorical, sensorial, you know, archetypal, whatever, of the ritual process or occultic, and embedding that within a popular. I'm going to go see a band. I'm going to go watch this play. I'm going to go see this, you know, this burlesque review. It's an occult initiation / even initiation. It is an initiation, but it's almost like a programming. You know what I mean? So you're not necessarily, you don't even know the order is there. You may become part of the OTO, but you know what I mean? But you don't know.
Right. No, I totally know what you mean. A lot of these bands and stuff are occultists. They're occultists before they even started a band. That's why they started a band. There's all kinds of stories about, some weren't as successful, but like the process tried to start a band, failed. There was the Magical Powerhouse of Oz that had, let's see if I can add this. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah. Okay. Or is this my whole? So this is something I came up with. I just threw a bunch of pictures together here today, but so we'll just give an example, right? So, so this is I always prepare so much material, man. I don't know why. I guess I'm a master.
It's all good.
So look at the magic bus, right? So the magic bus, we are on the magic bus of the culture. And so these are not just, how do you say it? They're not just benign.
Look at this. I'll take this off, but this is from the Grateful Dead website. The bus came by. It's incredible.
Yeah,
sorry.
The bus came by.
And the yellow submarine. Isn't there a yellow bus with the Beatles too? If I remember.
Yeah. So the magic, the magic bus, or the bus, right? So, let's look at, it's always good, to put something in a context, right? So, you want to look at what is a context that this is arising in, what came before it, what's the immediate, either contrary or pro, aspects in a culture, right? So what I mean by that is, you can see sometimes these will be 2 or 3 years out, right? So I can tie the whole magic bus into, the big bopper, the crash of the end of, the end of the 1950s.
1950s, right? The death of what is it? Richie Valens and those guys.
It was everybody. Elvis is in the army, Jerry Lee Lewis, all these people are in jail. It was just stopped. It was over. It was done for. It just boom, it was like a brick wall, right?
Mhm.
But you also going back, right? So I'm giving this sort of a broader perspective, but go back to what was the major use of buses in music? It was the big band era. Okay. So with the big band era, think about that. There's a little bit of a distinction in there because that was a very communal type of a thing, right? So you have these bands are touring around. This really, you have dancing, you have, it was a collective music that I think overall, was pretty positive in general. However, what time? It's wartime. You're trying to, you want that. You want people to be connected like that. But anyways, big band, of course. But they're touring around in buses, right? You got the tour bus, and they would go. The bus would show up because obviously you don't need a tour bus, for whatever. You're not going to put an orchestra in a tour bus or a jazz combo, but the bus itself becomes the journey. Now let's fast forward a little bit. We have Lacanian psychoanalysis. We have the divided self, R.D. Laing. We have some of these fringe setters, early 60s. You have Aldous Huxley pushing this idea that the sane are insane and the insane are sane, because we live in an insane society. So the mad person, the schizophrenic, is actually sane. And also looking at insanity and creativity, comparing religious states with states of schizophrenia, almost. But actually, R.D. Laing literally said that, right? He was very prominent. R.D. Laing, that, the British psychoanalyst, and he would take LSD with his patients and whatever. And he was kind of a wild man, but he really pushing this idea that, and then we have our society is messed up. Well, what you have this a little bit of a precursor to that, then you have JFK assassination. So this is a collective social rupture. This is like the fault line. Then you could look at things before and after that. Does that make sense?
So, yes, I think so. So there are definitely like watermarks. Kennedy was one.
And so the psychological effect, of course, you have the Beatles, But so the reason I'm doing this, not to get, hopefully, I usually see like kind of a big picture. So that's, whatever. Hopefully people are cool with that. But so we look at the bus. What is the bus? It's Ken Kesey, 1963, Merry Pranksters. What book did he write? One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. What is that? The people in the madhouse are actually sane, right?
Right.
The world. This is that's R.D. Laing's idea. Then what does Ken Kesey do? This military dude, ex-football player, extremely charismatic, very powerful personality. Could have been a Wall Street executive, could have been a high-level military brass kind of dude. He could have done just about anything. So he ends up working. Oh, where's that near? Stanford Research Institute. That's where he was.
Right down the street. Literally right down the street.
Given the LSD.
Just for the listener, it's R.D. Laing, R.D.L.A.I.N.G., not R.T.
So R.D. Laing, and there's a kind of a half-ass document, like biopic on him. That's kind of interesting to see. But he really, he was a very seminal figure, right? But so R.D. Laing though was, this is R.D. Laing is actually this guy is the grandfather of Ken Kesey. This is Ken Kesey's guru, right? Look at this guy.
Okay. Yeah.
He looks pretty
intense. He looks like he could be an MKUltra doctor. Easily. At least in some of these. Was he?
There's a one, a few days. He's got kind of a crazed look.
Which one is this?
Books. There's other one. He's smiling.
Dangerous Minds.
Yeah. Look at that. Oh my God. Would you trust that guy? Yes.
Nope. No, I would not. But that's what he studied was psychosis, right? He was studying madness, schizophrenia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so what he did, and he did stuff that's actually really dangerous, right? So he had he had this house, right? Warden was just like, and all the people, he was basically allowed to do whatever they wanted, right? and they would even drink together. So there was like psychotic, there's people that have, severe emotional trauma, and there were psychotic killers, and they're just hanging out. They can do whatever they want. If they want to, smash their head on the wall for hours, they can do it, but it's sort of a, so you may be able to
Bateson too. Bateson's around him.
Bateson is like Bateson is the Palo Alto, California. Bateson and colleagues developed the double-bind theory of schizophrenia, which is actually not the theory of schizophrenia. I always try to bring this up because everyone says, "Oh, double-bind." No, it's not. Okay, Bateson is a master of doublespeak, of doublethink, of obscurationism. Even when he talks, he's invoking Ericksonian hypnosis. You can't really find any solid literature written by Bateson. It's all kind of like most of the Bandler and Grinder NLP stuff. You get these dialogues, right? They're like, I won't swear, but what the heck are you going to do with that? You can look through it. Oh, that's cool. Everyone says Bateson's great. Bateson is extremely important. With Margaret Mead, this goes, now you brought it back to a little bit deeper layer, which we have this study. We're back in the 1930s. We're looking at, first of all, you have this idea of the unconscious, and you have Lacanian, psychoanalysis, which is a step up from Freud. In a certain way, Freud had projective mechanisms. He would say this is in your mind. It's not necessarily there, right? Some of the stuff of Freud is told, yes. Lacan, much different, right? But good luck trying to find a Lacan book you can understand. You know what I mean? They're almost written in code for the initiates. But Bateson, exact same thing. Insanity is sanity. But he was with Rand Corporation studying cultures, studying different ways of induction, belief systems, and then importing that back to the United States. So these are some of the fathers of the 1960s culture. So I didn't want to go into that. That's a whole nother strand. But you look, Palo Alto, they're all hanging out there and there. But just the double-bind theory of schizophrenia, this is an example of these types of, sort of disinformation or covered, right? You read cybernetic literature. It's written on 3 different layers: for the layman, for the practitioner, and for the initiate. So unless you're an initiate, you're not going to understand what's really written in a lot of these books.
Interesting.
Yeah. But
it's interesting that they were psychologists, but also interested in cybernetics as well. So it didn't start with the Neuralink, right?
They were also intelligence connections, right? And so the double bind theory says that, if someone says, they say one thing to you and they mean something else, this will create schizophrenia. Really? My mom says, "I love you," and she says it like that. I'm not going to become schizophrenic, dude. People, if you cannot interpret the fact that people's behavior, what they say and what they actually mean, or what's their intentions are, don't always align, you can't function. You know what I mean? You might as well go out on the street with a sign that says "rob me." You know what I mean? But that doesn't generate schizophrenia. There's no proof of that. And I've talked about this in a few shows, is schismogenesis. This is the generation of schizophrenia, actually, how it's done. It's not done by the double bind. But yes, did he work on that? Absolutely. And this is what this is, right? So back to the bus. So we're on the bus. So you have Ken Kesey out of nowhere, right? And remember, this came whole cloth. It wasn't like that they developed this day glow color style. They spent like 4 years experimenting. No, boom. Ken Kesey writes One of the Cuckoo's Nest, suddenly becomes this huge LSD guru, gets a bus, uses all these colors, creates this uniform, the whole culture. It happened very quickly. Then you've got the Grateful Dead around there. You've got all these other people. You have, they're really running experiments on people, and then we can go into the way this ties into Manson is
tons of MKUltra doctors around that area. I forgot one of these guys' names. He was the doctor for a couple of the killers in Santa Cruz. Long or Locke was at Stanford. There's a lot of Stanford, lots of eugenicists actually too, but there was a hotbed of eugenicism in Northern California, but there was a lot of behavioral scientists around too.
Oh yeah. Hey, William, could you bring up you can see like there's some actual footage, right, of the Ken Kesey's bus, like right when it first started, before the hippie movement.
Do you want me to see if I can find a video of
Yeah,
it?
find some on YouTube. Yeah, I just saw this Sabrina Fair. So you capture his imagination. Okay, so that's, I don't know how to close this. Yeah, so to capture so this is what. Well, let me stress this. This is the imaginal world, right? This is the experience of in a sense we imagine our life. Right? Imagine our lives. Well, I'll let you throw this on. I just answered.
It's interesting. One of these early ones does have the guy who inspired On the Road. I forgot what his name was.
You can put the sound on if you want.
All right, let me turn it off. That's it right there, right? There's the bus right there. That's them in the bus.
These guys are driving around in small town America and dosing people, and people go insane. Some of the people on the bus went insane. I mean, they literally. But look at this. This is benign. Where the heck did this come from, dude? That's so this is the essence of Jack Kerouac. It's a direct tie to the Beat Generation.
Yeah.
Direct link. Real fast.
What's that guy's name who ran with Kerouac? I forgot his name. He's driving.
That's Neil Cassidy.
Neil Cassidy. Yeah.
Otherwise known as Dean Moriarty. So in Kerouac's books, he goes under the name Dean Moriarty. Yeah, so you just play a little bit more, just if you could turn up the volume, at least on.
Yes, we had I was getting a little bit upset. I had something really you hit a rut, jump, and then the dirt spray in the face and all. I couldn't pay my everything.
I broke my tooth on the microphone. Hello to my microphone that doesn't.
Night and sound experiment.
I have a microphone.
I mean, it just sounds crazy just listening to it.
They're literally going around the acid test, and they're, we could go to this later because like any one of these topics, like I said, they kind of open out to all kinds of realms. But it's cool. This is fun connecting it. So you look at the acid test, man. They are really creepy, man. If you could bring that up, and I'll go back to just bring up like an acid test. I guess I could do that. But so let's just look at the bus, a metaphor for a culture, right? Are you on the bus or off the bus, right? That's a very common expression. So think about it. What is the childhood memory of getting on the school bus, right? You leave home, you get put on the bus, and you're going to school. You know what I mean? You know how much this is like a root archetypal experiential memory. Most people, some people may think about it, maybe not, but that's there. That's part of you. And so you see how this is like almost like a direct line to your sort of childhood. You could say your imaginal self, right? The Sabrina person, I saw that on YouTube. She commented. So yeah, this is the imagination. But by imagination, we need to define our terms clearly. I would talk about the imaginal, inner cerebral self-perspective generational matrix. Sounds very complicated, maybe is, but it's really your inner world, not just your imagination. What he means is we want to capture the inner world, not just because you say, Dumbo the elephant captured my imagination. So by using that word imagination, he's being disingenuous, right? So we want to capture their imagination. What he's really talking about is the inner mind, which goes to the Lacanian inner mirror. So that's another topic that's quite interesting. But think about the school bus. Driver's in control. You're along for the ride. So think about that, though, when you're going to school as a kid, right? And you're like, I don't want to get on the bus, right? Maybe sometimes you do, but I'm sure we all had bad experiences on school buses, or some of us, that had to take a bus, you know what I mean? Or where you don't want to go to school and you got to get on this bus, right? So it's almost like you're on the bus going between the prison cells, right? You're on the bus going to the prison cells. going between your prison. And that, what do they use in prisons? They use buses, right? Also, right? So, but think about, I just want to say that's an imprinting, right? Magic bus. So this goes to your childhood fantasy, or, you know, you don't want to go to school. You want to go to this magic playground, or imagine you're on the bus going on a field trip or whatever, right? So drivers in control, teachers in control, you're passive. So we have Hermann Hesse, right? Very important book, Steppenwolf, talking about the magic theater of the mind. So this was a very powerful book to shape culture multiple decades before that became very popular again in the 1960s. This became like one of the books that was like sort of a Bible for the hippie generation. But he talks about the magic theater of the mind where only the insane can enter, right? So again, premising this madness, insanity to enter this. But then actually what's being shown is this madness, this, you know, crazed existence on this, you know, bus that you're not even the driver of, right? You may not even know where the destination is. This is freedom. This is what you want. Okay. So, but yeah, the idea is once you're on the magic bus, you don't get off. And so we can see that with, you know, how many people, even though they've developed a lot of emotion, you know, in their lives, they may be very successful. They may have certain aspects of themselves that are very immature, right? And some of those may be linked to music also, right? You know, people that don't want to, you know, certain, I don't mean, some of that's, it's hard, you know, some of it's harmless, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's getting frozen in aspects of our timeline, right? Puts us into a conditioning cybernetic closed system that we don't even know that we are being conditioned, because the cybernetic loop is self-feeding and self-replicating. And when this is inscribed on you, it's almost like you identify with it, you know. So
interesting. Right. So it started, like the conditioning started back then with the 60s. The 60s, the magic bus, these themes.
Yeah. You want me to bring it up a video?
Yeah, go to the next one.
You want to bring up a video of the actual acid test footage?
Sure.
Yep.
Let's see. This is old Neil Cassady footage.
So just think if you'd like to, we'll just set the scene, right? So you're, you know, pause it real quick. So think of it, we still have 1950s America, right? We have a totally different culture than we have now, right? We don't have, you know what I mean? You know, we have a very different society than we can even imagine, right? You know, and so this is a complete anomaly, right? And imagine you go to this acid test, you don't even know what LSD is, but go ahead and play it. But think about what they did. So this is.
So here's one of the reasons why we're on our way to LA is that we.
LSDU will be held at Wonderland.
This guy's a representative of the old culture, right on the left. And then
Yeah, this is a newsman. You think if they didn't want this stuff on the media, they're just interviewing this? What I'm saying, this is, you find this stuff on the TV. You know, in 63, you know, even around the Beatles, this is before there was psychedelic rock. You could hear on the bus, they're listening to like Chuck Berry. You know what I mean? So go ahead.
It's Halloween. And of course, the man who is going to be passing out the diplomas is Ken Kesey.
No, I'm not going to be passing out the diplomas. Neil Cassady is going to be passing out the diplomas. I am just kind of helping put it together. He knows the people better than I do.
Well, Ken, what's the theme of this commencement exercise?
Hello, am I coming through? Oh, yes, there I see a reading corner of billboard. Thanks to a personal invitation extended to me by the captain himself. And for any of you who have harbored doubts as to the seriousness of tonight's mission, well, the captain has assured me that is prearranged with the owners of.
You probably skip ahead just a little bit.
The remainder of the night. That's right. Just as you feared. Not until dawn's gray light. Right.
That's inside the test. Right.
What's that?
I want to see inside the test, you know, like what they're doing.
This is it, right?
Yep.
If it's a derangement of
sound.
Weird.
A little bit further, just started a little bit further
It's
up.
like a circus.
No, but this stuff is kind of cool.
That's a young Jerry Garcia right there.
I mean, you can stop it. I'll try to find something.
I don't know what section you're trying to get.
Yeah, no. There's a when you I'll show you this, because basically what they have is they have all these like crazy noises and lights, and it's extremely disturbing. That's dead playing, you know. I'll just find this real quick here, but you know, it's like, so does this seem benign? You know what I mean? I don't know. And how are all these guys all coming together in the same area, right? And then let's throw in Tom Wolfe, right? The guy that wrote The Right Stuff, right? The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. Anyone know that book?
I do.
Yeah. So of course Tom Wolfe is a very, you know, famous, you know, high-level journalist, author, whatever. But so he wrote this commemoration. In fact, that was encouraged me. I had a class on LSD in my high school, and they asked me to, you know, I mean, no, I mean, there are people that are like, they're literally pushing LSD when I was in high school, man. I went to this alternative school. And I mean, they're like, you know, I mean, literally, you know, having us read this book and then talking about how cool LSD is and, you know, this kind of thing. So, you know, it's, okay. Well, you know what? Maybe next time we'll show that. I think that video clip's gone. But anyways, so this is a concert, but when you see the actual acid test, right? So they have all this like strange noise, all these tape things sped up and sped down. The whole point is, can you make it through it without going insane? You know, you like this, some of these flashing lights, they have strobe stuff. There's some really crazy things that are it's extremely disturbing, right? And they have voices, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. You know, like laughter. I mean, you know, bizarre stuff, which is straight out of what they're experimenting in the 1930s and 40s, right? And then you're on LSD. You know what I mean? Like, do you look at this? I mean, you know.
This is what they were encouraging: derangement of the senses. Like here he is.
And imagine though, like, you don't even know what you're on, and there's some, you know, they're trying to freak you out, right? They're trying to make it scary. They're trying to make it so you lose your mind and you lose your stuff, right? You know, and then you have this inner core that's all working together, and you don't know who's just some dude off the street like you or some inner core member, right? So, you know, anyways, so you know, this is just one example of that. But that was straight up experimentation, right? And this guy is on a mainstream TV news channel, being interviewed, you know what I mean? So this stuff was promoted, and they're just acting like, oh, they're talking about it like you're not gonna walk into, just basically like an open air mind control laboratory, literally. Where they're experimenting with different frequencies, they're trying to generate different mental states, or they're experimenting with looking at collective mental things, and you have this like dirge-like, noodling of Jerry Garcia. I should write that down. Dirge-like noodling. Just kidding. So this guy was All American Boy, right? So you picked the All American Boy to promote the hippies generation, and he never grew long hair. He was always like the jock,
Right. Pretty incredible. Ken Kesey, that's right. He worked at what was it? It was the Veterans Administration Building in Menlo Park. That's where he worked. That's where he got the inspiration to write One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because he saw all those people drugged out and in the mental institution.
Well, another thing too is look how quickly the movie came out, right? So normally, a book to option a book for a film that can take like a decade, or at least a couple of years, but it's almost right after it's published. And you know what I mean? And then also Rosemary's Baby, right? That's another one where the book is written, but the book is almost like the script. And in fact, you have The Omen, which is another thing like that. And these are all almost like a decade interspersed between each one. But The Omen was the screenwriter actually wrote the novel, and that almost came out at the same time, right? So you think of Ken Kesey as this author, but he's actually, think about Jack Nicholson, think about that movie.
What was the movie that they did where the motorcycles, all this stuff, these are all change agents, right? They're all change agents.
Like the Wild Ones, Marlon Brando.
Yeah, no, the one that where they're driving around with Fonda, smoking pot, Easy Rider. Those are all change agent type stuff.
Yeah.
Culture change agent stuff. Yeah.
Well, what I'm sort of alluding to is that you can look when I'm giving everyone my secret method now, but basically you look at before and after, and then you look at 1950s rock. What do you have? Blackboard Jungle, very important movie, right? You have the the Jets and the Jets and the Crips or whatever they are, the movie West Side Story. I mean, that play West Side Story is a musical. All these things, in a sense, they're coming prior. Some of them are coming pre-facto. They're not coming ex post facto, right? You know what I mean? So, but think, One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But the thing is that, just give you an example though, because I'm having a flashback to my, psychedelics and LSD class that I took in 10th grade, at the alternative program. And the person that wrote Heathers went there, and also Orange Is the New Black. They both went to my alternative high school.
Oh, interesting.
But I mean, so you think Ken Kesey, he wrote this. He's a writer. So your first encounter with Ken Kesey is he's a writer. He's an author. Oh, they made this movie. This is a cool movie. Oh, there's this other book by Tom Wolfe. Oh, Electric Light Acid Test. Oh, wait, LSD is cool. Because in a certain way though, Ken Kesey's connection with the acid test was sort of not necessarily always, promoted, right? You know what I mean? Like it was, but One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest has been a major, film, right?
Absolutely, won the best Academy Award for best film.
But
pretty sure.
I'll just add another layer onto this. Look how this is connected with actors. Jack Nicholson, The Shining, other movies he's been in, right? So this actor almost has some type of archetypal roles also. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of mind control in The Shining. There's definitely the little boy or whatever has a split personality. That's what he does.
All right. So, I'll get back to I'll just go through the slideshow here. So I'm not,
let's do it.
So this is an example of how this is a type of kinetic or mimetic warfare, or just the protocol decode, encode, engage. So targeting audiences and consciousness, right? So you use some of these methods or techniques, the listener, right? A perceiver. So you're giving an input signal that may be an involuntary input signal, right? If you there's certain music, right? It seems to be less now, maybe because I talked about it. It used to be everywhere you go, gas station, they're playing music, this, that. I'm not hearing that as much anymore. But sometimes you this music, like you go to like wherever you shop at, Walmart or Kmart, the music is going right in the background, and so that's an example of, it's an audience, but you're not you're an audience because it's the signals coming to you, and then consciousness, right? So the verbalization technique, I have to look at my notes, but basically, so this is the technique can actually, 24 hours later, some of these things you're not going to know you're affected at the time, but 24 hours later, they can see collective changes. They can see the effect of this kinetic warfare or information warfare. So, and this is of course advertising. So we look at this advertising consciousness. One level of this, of course, is like coming from advertising, right? The Walter Lippmann and etc. but Gustav Le Bon, the crowd, this the realization of the mass mind, right? The realization of this, not as the masses, but as the mass mind. So this is a distinction. So this quote, Swen Hughes, a weaponized narrative is a form of non-kinetic warfare. So of course, non-kinetic means it's not, it's not like using your taser or gun or whatever, that seeks to undermine an opponent's supporters, identity, and will. So imagine you're 18 years old in 1964, 1965, and you hear that song, "Let's Go to San Francisco." That came before the Summer of Love, the advertisement. It's not hardcore psychedelic rock. It's a very nice kind of light poppy song. You hear that. Your supporters, your parents say, don't go there. If you go there, this may ruin your life. So it is, you know what I mean? So look at that family structure, supporters. So, and then identity. Your identity is being subsumed, and then ultimately your will. Ebulia.
So they were using those techniques back in the 60s. The same thing is happening now. Fifth generation warfare is just like this. Weaponized narratives and manipulating whole individuals and movements, right? I mean, this whole COVID thing is like just part of this MKUltra that went back to post-war World War II, I think.
Yeah. So like, again, this is the rest of it, messaging that generates confusion or political and social schisms. Confusion or political and social schisms. So look at that. Confusion, right? Think about this. Oh, well, we can see it all over the place, right? So it's, I saw this clip of this guy, one of these morning talk show host guys kind of freaking out about the fashion line with the
Balenciaga.
I don't know if you've seen his clip, but he actually breaks the narrative, and he goes into it. He says, I have two boys. I said, this, how come it took a week and a half for anyone even to talk about this? How come that people aren't getting canceled? How come no one's disavowing them? When you're canceling people like this, like that, like this, you're going back 20 years to find reasons to cancel people. And this is just skating through. But he blew up. So in a certain way, he blew that narrative. Well, look, that's confusion. Oh, subconsciously. Oh, well, maybe it's okay to show, like, they have the well, this is a very horrible thing, but they have the baggy eyes, they have it in these of some of the kids are in the pictures, or the bears. That's it, what I mean? So this is that's really diabolical stuff, but you get confused about it. Oh, maybe it's okay because I don't know, who's the latest talk show guy? Oprah says it's cool, man.
Right.
Oprah was hanging out at
this is schismogenesis, right? It's public schismogenesis.
Schismogenesis is a bit deeper in this, but this is a component in the process. But anyway, but social schisms, tactical strategic aims. All right, language that is, so it's a language, right? It is language that is designed to create specific perception of behavior, change to help one side against the other. Well, I mean, okay. So, okay. This is really interesting. I forgot. Yeah, I put this in. So, a very interesting and really disturbing, very trippy movie is the Magical Mystery Tour, right? And that is really, really a far out movie, right? It is really interesting. Okay. And we have to really, bear in mind that, there wasn't, like, for example, now, like, you see people with like tattoos or like punks with mohawks, you see them everywhere. There were actually very few hippies except for outside of, main urban areas. But so look at this. Yeah. I have the original album, with all the liner notes inside there. So this was a really freaky thing that was just supposedly slapped together. But the Magical Mystery Tour, it's just go through some images of it.
It's incredible. This is all this stuff. It's got the rainbow, the animal,
look at
costumes.
that. Yeah. There's
the bus, right?
Get on the bus.
Yeah.
This is a magical. Look at this.
There's a bus.
Go up a little bit.
Sure.
So like this right here. like this performance
What's
thing.
this?
I mean, look
Yeah.
at that. That looks. Does that look like the happy-go-lucky? You know, I want to hold your hand, guys. Where did that come from? Right? You know, that's some
It didn't come
weird.
from them, I bet. It didn't come from them.
Well, look at all these people, right? So this is also, you know what? When you get a lobotomy, they shave your head, right? See that, like the egghead head, you crack the mind, right? Humpty Dumpty, shatter the, you know.
Psychosurgery. Yeah, no, it's all there.
But yeah, that's an era. I mean,
Find the song.
because you know, and some of this stuff. This is one of the things just to mention that it. Well, we saw that little.
And now we're going to play a track from Magical Mystery Tour, which is one of my favorite albums
Here's the
because
bus.
it's so weird. I Am the Walrus, one of my favorite tracks because I did it, of course, but also because it's one of those that has enough little biddies going to keep you interested even 100 years later.
I am the Eggman. I am the Eggman. I am the Walrus.
You'd have success with something that might have seemed like a far out idea. People would say, wow, this is great. What other ideas have you got?
If you think it was good, keep it. If you don't, scrap it.
You say yes, I say no.
You can pause it here.
What's up?
You know, so this actually would be kind of fun. Maybe I go into this whole movie because there's so much in this movie, right? So it's really almost like a template of everything I'm talking about. You know, even they have the theater of, there's like some scenes right where they go into this theater, right? This tent set up. It's the Hermann Hesse magical theater of the mind, right? And so, but go ahead. Yeah, it's I want to interrupt you there, but
You want to play the rest of it?
no, I was just saying it's interesting to go through this whole thing. I'm going to look for a few clips, but if you want to go ahead and
I mean, I just think it's interesting. You say yes, I say no. There's like conflict already in the lyrics. It's really, I mean, you can, once you take apart what they're up to, it's crazy.
But what I'm going to say is actually what it comes across as, you know, as just being sort of like, you know, like when I first saw it, I remember seeing it, right? And I was like, you know, this is just, you know, a bunch of self-indulgent rock stars just doing some crap film. You know what I mean?
Right.
Kind of a half-ass film that that you know, that has some cool music in it, right? Well, that also, you know, talking about that information warfare, depending on what your you know, what your framing is, right? What's your like, if now we're watching it now, if you notice, right, if you look at it now, just even that little clip of I'm the Walrus, did it not look a little bit creepy and disturbing, right? You could think of, we get all the stuff, think of this Crowleyan ritual. You're watching that, there's some kind of ritual going on. But you know what I'm just trying to say is that if you go, you know, what just you walk into the acid test, you think it's just good fun and games, or you walk there knowing exactly what's going on, you have a very different mindset.
Right. Exactly. Who's the puppet and who's the puppeteer, right? It's like those people who did the acid test were puppets. They were being experimented on. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of psychologist in those meetings taking notes, making dossiers, studying it. You know that Jolly West studied the hippies for like 2 or 3 years. Like
Well,
he
Jolly
actually,
West,
yeah,
Jolly West. This was like my big. I don't know if I want to reveal this now. This is like the thing that makes all this absolutely 100% concrete, completely ties everything together. It's amazing, and this is when I did stuff I didn't have this information, so I'll come back and do that. But this ties this in whole thing, whole cloth, you know, with the actual experiments that were being conducted. They started with rats, but I'll get into that later. But I'll talk about that. So the whole thing, but I don't want to go there. That's like my, you know, once I get my website functioning, I'll do that. But so magic. So think about Roll Up, right? So what is also coming off the British holiday tour, right? So you notice everyone on the bus is a typical kind of square British person. Big tradition in England, holiday camps, right? The whole family or the adult couple goes away to the, you know, seaside holiday camp, right? They can go on a bus, right? So this holiday camp thing, which is exactly what this is, based off of that sort of British cultural, institution. So again, it's an inane joke. It's starts out really slapstick, just looks just kind of like, you just think this is just some, these guys are just messing around, or they're just, this is just just a crappy movie, but I like the Beatles, so I'm going to watch it. But then they start embedding the symbolism. The symbolism ties, once you catch these symbolic things, they go through the movie. This is the conditioning aspect, right? And that initial crappy, shoddy filmmaking puts your guard down. And you're just, and then so you're almost like, oh, this is kind of bored. Also, boredom is a great way to do that, right? You start getting bored. Man, this is really boring. That Hans guy is really boring, man. Then I'm controlling your mind. But so okay, but the Beatles in this movie are wizards, right? And they're doing this invocation, and they're showing you they're doing the invocation, which is very interesting. And then George, the dark programming, there's one part of the movie that is really dark. That is, if you watch it clearly, you will see that. And maybe since you can show video clips, I have on a hard drive somewhere, I have all these sections of the movies that I made my own clips. And then after that, there's a magical theater of the mind. They're watching, the passengers are on the magical mystery tour, but they're going in this tent, just like Plato's Cave, and watching this video footage. Okay. Watching the film. And so a lot of people, that Paul is dead. We'll get into that. Right. But, so here's the lyrics. Magical mystery tour is dying. Take you away. Is dying. This is a death. This is the white light. This is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, being the map of the inner consciousness, promoted by Timothy Leary, promoted by the Grateful Dead in the LSD culture, primarily in Southern California, right? So dying, go to the white light. They're reading the Book of the Dead. They're just like, and this was a big part of it. Dying to take you away. Okay. Roll up. That's an invitation. Roll up to make a reservation. Okay. But so roll up is probably like a British term, but roll up is also roll up your joint, right? Obviously it's like, Puff the Magic Dragon, but roll up. That's an invitation. Is it an invitation or a command? Right. And then so it's coming to take you away. So it's actually coming after you, right? So, again, it's putting you in that helpless mindset. The school bus is coming. I have to get on. You know what I mean? Or the monster's coming. Right. And then dying to take you away, take you today. And what it can actually say is take your today, take away, start removing you from the actual experience of your own life and start programming you, right? But I think I have some more lyrics. But look at these friendly guys. So, what do we have? We look at this mask, so in the center, you have this sort of, happy-go-lucky, goofy rabbit. Then you've got this sort of demonic walrus. And then you have this, what is that? The two horns, right? And then look at George Harrison. But so that's, so these are, all this stuff. I mean, look at their hand gestures, right? So they're actually, bring up a picture of Baphomet, and you'll see this is like a big group model of Baphomet.
Wow. It reminded me of The Shining. That's what Annabelle said too. It reminded me of that scene in The Shining. One of the guys dressed like that.
Oh, I can just share a screen. I'll do that.
Oh, do you want me to do it? What do you want me to share?
Oh, just a picture of a Baphomet. So we went to put Elias Levy. There we go. That's a classic picture of Elias Levy. Yeah, he's connected with the Knights Templar.
That's the classic.
So look at the hand gestures, horns. Now we go back. So they have the same hand gesture. Horns, right? So if you look at that, you compress that. I mean,
Right. You got the horn. You've got the stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So, man, am I pushing it there? No, but
No,
it's there. No, I'm not.
They've been caught making all kinds of those magical gestures, not in maybe this movie, but they were doing definite stuff that was in Crowley's Equinox. They were making all those gestures and stuff like that. So
Yeah. It's so this becomes more apparent, further on through the movie, right? But that's just, that's just an example. Now, oops. So let's see here. So this is where, George Harrison, this is where it's Please Don't Be Long, right? It's actually a pretty cool song. But it's, I don't think, can you you're able to play like the video for that.
For what song?
You know what? I just my mental conditioning kicked in. I forget the name of it. It's like Blue Jay Way, I think.
Blue Jay Way?
With the song.
Blue Jay Way Beatles?
Yeah, let me just see. So,
does this look right?
I think so. Yeah, just try it.
It's the same outfit he's wearing in that.
Yeah. Well, look at the chalk, right? So you got the stuff in there.
There's a fog upon LA, and my friends have lost their way. We'll be over soon, they say. Now they've lost themselves instead.
Look at that.
Please don't be long. Please don't you be very long. Please don't be long. So I may be asleep. Well, it only goes to show that I told them where to go. Ask a policeman on the street. There's so many there to meet. Please don't be long. Please don't you be very long. Please don't be long. Oh, I may be asleep. Now it's past my bed, I know, and I'd really like to go. Soon will be the break of day, sitting here in Blue Jay Way.
Okay, we can stop it there.
Okay.
So did you catch that room with the video screen and the hobby horse?
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch that one?
Mm-hmm.
That's like your like the TV show The Prisoner, right? That's your that's like your occult programming room. So like that now, but then they flipped. Notice that scene they flipped to this. Oh, the goofy madcap lads. Look, so this is going to go below the threshold of consciousness of most watchers. Like, look at all this weird symbolism. I mean, that's kind of
riding the horse,
but it's being projected into, like, the film was projected on his body, on the string, and so all this stuff,
That's kind of like their handler too. That was supposedly Fall's handler. His name is Malcolm something. I forgot his last name. But he's not part of the band, but he's around them. That's his suspected handler. That's when Fall disappeared to like Africa. This guy was with him. I forgot his name.
But see, look at that. Well, you can close it now. But you think about that as the mind. This is the mental, imaginal space that Bateson is controlling. This is your inner world. If you're fragmented, look at that screen projected here, there, the childhood. So we, and so, but in a certain way, they're showing, because there are programming scenarios, right, that have different things. Someone is drugged, brought to a state of, whatever, feeble-mindedness, and they put them on a hobby horse. You know what I mean? Da da da. So
right. It's Malcolm Evans. That's Malcolm Evans. He died.
So, and it's all saying like who's programming who, right? But
right.
You want to go? You can go bring the slides back if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, anyways, so more pictures, and there's a wonderful picture of John Lennon sitting like with like almost like a really creepy kind of pedophilia thing, where there's like this little girl, hello little girl, can I, on the bus, right? Very creepy. That's like before he's wearing that hat, see, with the two horns on it, that double feather hat with the heart, right? And this is when he sits next, the only time he wears that hat in the movie, but it's just, before they get to the psychedelic playground paradise, while the bus is, it's still kind of like a British, the people have just gotten on the bus and it's like a British holiday camp. But then he goes and sits next to this little girl, like in a very, it's very creepy, right? So that's just, and that's where the symbolism starts coming in. But anyways, so yeah. And then, so this is, we have, hygiene of the mind. So without hygiene of the mind, every social system among men and women would be to pieces, would probably fall to pieces. So hygiene of the mind, brainwashing, right? What does mental hygiene mean, right? So, the mental hygiene initiatives with the League of Nations, with United Nations, with all these people tied in with mental hygiene, which ties in exactly what we're in right now in a lot of ways. And then the crowd, Gustave Le Bon, the slave of all unconscious activity of his spinal cord, which the hypnotizer directs at will. The conscious personality has entirely vanished. Will and discernment are lost. So this is really, and this is in, 1897, right here. Yeah. And what's interesting, note, there was a lot more knowledge about neuroscience than you would think, right? And of the brain, there's really there's a lot of technology that was suppressed right around the turn of the century, but a lot of knowledge. So, and this is the spine going into the endocrinal system. This is what music can imprint on, potentially can imprint on. So I'm going to chime in there. Would you like to say something, William? Or
no? I mean, it's just interesting. I see where you're going. I think we should probably just end in 10 minutes and then just do a part 2. I think that's probably
okay. Cool. Yeah. So we just kind of wrap up. So I'll just, I'm going to go ahead and close this out then.
Simulacrum
from studio. Yeah. So
do you want to take some questions?
Absolutely. Yep.
Does anybody have any questions or anything? I mean, it's basically, what's the whole thing? Like you said that Jolly and West is going to close up this whole arc of your research on this topic. Is that right?
Well, no, it's what it is absolute concrete proof and evidence that how, everything, I'm talking about, and actually just a real, it's pretty cool. It's super interesting. So it's like, to me, was like explosive. So what I'm saying sounds kind of, it's general and there's some, but this is like, boom, here it is. Right. So.
Right. But you're seeing these behavioral scientists and psychologists and psychiatrists gaming the cultural system, at least up until the 60s. I mean, who knows what they're doing today? I know that Cass Sunstein was involved in the whole COVID thing to get everybody on board with everything. Like that guy knows a lot about behavioral science and the law. Carl asks, how many dead shows have you attended? Have you attended?
No, I luckily I didn't go to too many. I actually, okay. Oops, the lighting is even worse. But I went to enough. But I got, the thing is, I had a few experiences that really, I saw some disturbing things, or either energetically or actually, and I could feel I'm getting sucked into this. life in this world, and I had to get out. That's probably one of the reasons I went to India, actually, was to kind of go away from that space almost, because it actually extended out from the Grateful Dead to the world around me. Like this is actually, maybe you could say this is my root experience, which I'll talk about next time. But yeah, so but I tended, I think, I mean, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe 6 or whatever, but not that many. I didn't really get into it. I was brought in by an older guy when I was like 14 or something.
Oh wow.
But he was just like this, like, friendly. Now I see the guy like some 40-year-old dude hanging out with a 14-year-old kid and taking him to a Dead show. It seems a little creepy, but I didn't, whatever. But yeah.
No, it's a weird culture, and they had just this, like, they were like traveling merry pranksters in a lot of ways, just a band, because they had all kinds of followers. They used to come through my hometown, and then all the people would be there selling stuff and going to the shows, and it was kind of like a weird kind of hippie movable party feast, and people used to buy drugs. There was open air kind of drug dealing all over the place of all kinds of stuff. That's how people would finance going to the shows, was selling LSD or what was it? What's the other stuff? People, nitrous oxide, if I remember.
Oh my God, nitrous.
Yeah.
Oh, how about that guy who became addicted to nitrous? I give up.
Yeah, it can't be good for you. It cannot be good for you.
No. Yeah, the guy that went, he was a billionaire, in his 40s, but he was just addicted. He was doing nitrous oxide all day and da. So my friend actually knows him personally, but anyways, yeah, back to the thing. So it's on the outside. Like I had, in a certain way, like, so I ended up being around like some Rainbow Tribe people that were in college. And I felt some kind of attraction, part of my family's from the West Coast. So I would see some of these hippies and they kind of seemed like cool people. You know what I mean? I was like, probably like 10 years old, 12 years old, and I remember seeing like in the West Coast, you know what I mean? And I thought it seemed some kind of magical, whatever. But yeah, I had several experiences with that, I'm glad I did, you know what I mean? That pushed me away from that thing. And a lot of people just go to a show, right? But there's a lot there. So
yeah, we'll pick it up next time, and I'll put your contact information and website in the show notes if people want to reach out to you. But I think there's a lot there. Like, we've only got to the 60s or maybe early 70s because they've been engineering us for a long time, at least past World War II. I mean, you go through some of these bands and stuff, you got handlers or intel people, you got all kinds of strange things going on. It's Beatles too, right? Wasn't one of their guys like George? I forgot his name. They were getting
they're also they're connected also with like the Cray brothers. They're connected with some of this, it was, I think, Jersey Island, where they had like, a bunch of like mass graves of kids found. So there's a lot of little creepy things in there, some of their sidereal connections. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's example. Yeah, Fish I saw Fish, when I saw him in when they were, pretty young. And actually at that time I was like, I thought Fish sucked the first time I saw them. And they're good players, right? But Grateful Dead was distributing LSD across the United States. I mean, they were doing probably 90% of LSD distribution was coming through the Grateful Dead family. I mean, I remember one thing that creeped me out. There's like a religion where they worship the dead, right? They had like, they'd worship them. They had like these posters, and they had like little idols, and they had like their little scriptures, books. And then, someone brought me into this. It's like, this is some weird stuff, man. You know what I mean? So, but there was all kinds of different stuff in that whole community, and probably some good things experientially, people getting together, but what else?
Well, the culture creation, I'm not sure if there was very responsible, creating a whole new class of people who did tons of drugs and derangement and creating conflicts and stuff like that in the larger society. I don't know if that really
I was kind of
productive. A lot of I knew a guy from my high school who followed the Dead, and he just dropped out, man. He was done. And I think he was living on the streets in San Francisco. And like some of my other classmates, they all had to get money together to get him off the street. He was not that whole arc of his life of like achieving things and getting kind of temporal, financial, success was gone. It just didn't exist. It was a trip. He got something happened to him that wasn't good.
Well, I saw a couple, I had a very intense experience. I'll talk about it next time. But that's why I went to India, man. It was almost like I wasn't going there I was going there to escape the counterculture, maybe. But
there's a lot of wreckage. I mean, I was just did a show on Philip K. Dick, and like at the end of Scanner Darkly, it just all madness and craziness of a lot of drug heads, people who were doing all those drugs. He just had a list of crazy, and a lot of people who survived, they know how bad it got. The generation after, they didn't experience it as much as the people who got fried, the acid casualties in the 60s. So.
Well, I had a friend, I was on the gymnastics team, and he was like a senior. I think I was like a freshman or sophomore. I really looked up to the guy, right? Incredibly talented, very handsome, charismatic, fit. He had like genius IQ, physics, math. But also he was he was really into like music. I went a year after high school, like he graduated. I went to his house or his parents' house, and he's like, "Have you seen The Clear Light?" And he was taking acid, listening to Tim Leary, whatever, and he really got into it. And then I saw him like a decade later, and he was homeless.
Yeah.
And this is a guy, so yeah, for sure. And that's just one of the aspects, but also which I have all these audio clips, right? Maybe I can put those in a video format where they're talking in their own words about how we're going to disrupt this town and how we're doing it. And it's almost like it's describing it like a military campaign to go into the heartland of America and just shake things up.
Yeah, you can take anything and you have to put it into an MP4. So it's definitely not like your standard MP3, but I think it's the video standard. Then you can play it. Like I think that you can actually, I know you can do it on an Apple where you can, change different types of documents to new documents. I don't know if you can do it. I don't know what kind of computer you have, but yeah, you should put that together. Let's try to do something maybe before Christmas holidays. I mean,
that sounds great. Yeah. Well, it was really awesome having me on here, and wasn't quite sure what we're going to talk about, but we found. No, because you're such a good listener. Sometimes I'm like, it's like the awkward silence. No one has anything. No,
keep talking. I have a lot to say. I don't mind my guests talking. You definitely have a lot of research. You said in the pre-show you have 2,000 pages, so you've done a lot of shows with Jan. So there's a lot of information there. I'll put some of those shows up. I'll put links to those shows up. I'll see what's going on with it too. But Hans Utter, and the website is your full name, HANSUTTER.com. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Well, have a wonderful day.
You too. Stay there.